It all started when I received the call from the wealthy couple. They had heard about the ancient forest island, a place so remote and filled with mystery that even the locals wouldn't go near it. To me, it seemed like just another job. Guide a couple to a secluded spot, show them the beauty of the land, then pack up and leave. I'd done this 100 times before, but there was something different about this island. Something unsettling in the way they spoke about it. Something behind their polite words that gave me pause. I had heard whispers over the years, stories from old-timers in nearby towns, about strange happenings on the island. How a group of researchers had vanished without a trace. How travelers, lost in the woods, were never found. But I shrugged it off. After all, these were just stories, right? The island itself had been abandoned for years, untouched by human hands, a forgotten relic of a time long past. No one ever bothered to revisit it until now. I made preparations as I always did. Maps, supplies, a GPS system that I doubted would work in such a remote place, and a few other essentials. The couple was already on their way, eager for their retreat. I'd met them briefly before, rich, well-dressed, and full of the kind of energy that seemed to only come from people who had everything they could ever want. They were not the type of people who'd listen to my warnings about the island's eerie reputation. Still, I wasn't there to argue. I was just there to guide them. We reached the island by boat, the only way to get there. The moment we stepped off the dock, I felt it. The air was thick, heavier than it should have been, pressing down on me like a weight on my chest. The trees around us were ancient, their gnarled branches twisting upward, as if reaching for something far beyond the sky. The silence was almost unbearable, broken only by the faint rustling of leaves. The cabin where we would be staying was tucked deep within the woods, far from the shores. It looked old, rustic, but well-maintained. A comfort for the couple, I suppose. As we approached, I felt a sudden sense of unease, a gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. I shook it off. Maybe it was the isolation, the unknowns that lay hidden just beyond the trees. When we entered, the couple immediately began unpacking, talking excitedly about their plans for the weekend. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I stepped out onto the small porch, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind, but the forest was still. Too still. It wasn't natural. There were no animals, no birds, no insects, just the silence that seemed to pulse with something dark and ancient. That night, I went over the island's few rules, simple guidelines meant to keep people safe while they stayed there. The couple didn't seem concerned. They were too excited, too wrapped up in their idea of a perfect getaway. I had to remind myself that I wasn't there to entertain their worries. I was there to guide them, but as I explained the rules, something made me hesitate. They were simple rules, yet their weight felt heavy as I spoke them aloud. 1. If you ever find yourself walking along a stone path that wasn't there before, you must never walk in a straight line. Always take a deliberate, winding course, even if it seems to delay your journey. If you walk straight ahead, the stones will shift beneath your feet, trapping you on a path that loops back endlessly, forcing you to walk in circles until you can no longer remember where you started. 2. At dusk, if you notice a flickering green light in the distance, you must not follow it under any circumstance, no matter how alluring it seems. The light is the signal of an entity that feeds on curiosity. It will lead you to a pit in the forest where you will be forced to relive your worst memories in an endless loop. To escape, you must break the cycle by willingly accepting an irreversible loss, but the cost is more than anyone can bear. 3.in the main cabin on the island, you will find a locked door that was not there when you first arrived. If you ever open this door, you will release something that has been sealed away for centuries. The door must remain closed at all times, and you must never speak of it to anyone. If you do, you will attract its attention, and it will seek to draw you into its realm, a place where time distorts and reality is twisted. For in the heart of the forest, there is a tree with an exposed root system that seems to hum with life. If you hear whispers coming from the roots, you must never respond. The voices are those of the long-dead souls who sought to communicate with the spirits of the island. If you speak back, your soul will become tethered to the island, bound to the tree forever, where you will wander as a voice in the whispers, unable to leave. I didn't believe in any of it, at least not at first. I had heard plenty of stories, but they were just that, stories. My job was to make sure they had a safe, relaxing trip. But things didn't feel right from the start. It wasn't until later that night, as I lay awake in my bed, that I started to hear things. Soft, whispering voices. They seemed to come from nowhere, drifting through the walls, down the stairs, from outside. I told myself it was just the wind. There was no way I could be hearing anything real. The next morning, I went for a walk to clear my mind. The air was cold, and the forest was darker than it should have been, even though the sun was just starting to rise. The path before me twisted in unexpected directions, the trees seeming to close in tighter around me the further I walked. That's when I saw it. A stone path, one that wasn't there the day before, winding through the trees, leading deeper into the island. The stones glinted in the weak morning light, as though beckoning me. I paused, my heart racing. The first rule came to my mind. I remembered the warning, but something about the path called to me. I ignored the warning. It seemed harmless, but as I began to walk, the stones shifted beneath my feet, and I couldn't stop moving forward. The path seemed endless, looping back on itself in strange, unnatural ways. Every time I tried to turn around, I ended up exactly where I started, as if the island itself was twisting and warping around me. Panic gripped me. I couldn't remember how long I'd been walking. Hours? Days? The trees around me blurred into indistinguishable shapes, and the air grew thick, suffocating. I had to get out, but I couldn't find my way. It was as if the island was trapping me in its endless loop. Then, just when I thought I couldn't take it any longer, the path split again. A flickering light appeared in the distance. Green, faint but unmistakable. It beckoned me. The second rule flashed through my mind. The light. I was supposed to ignore it, but I couldn't. I followed it, step by step, drawn by something I couldn't explain. The light flickered again, brighter this time, and I felt myself getting closer to the pit in the woods, where my worst memories awaited. And that's when it happened. I stepped into the pit. The world shifted, and I was no longer in the forest. I was back at home, in my old room, a place I hadn't been in years. The walls were different, but I could hear my father's voice from downstairs. He was calling my name. I could smell the dinner he was preparing. Everything felt so real, but I knew it wasn't. The moment I stepped forward, the scene shattered, and I was thrust into another memory. This time, it was a moment from my past, one I wished I could forget. The memory of my sister's death, her body lying motionless on the floor, and the guilt that I hadn't been able to save her. I couldn't escape it. The loop kept turning, bringing me back to that memory over and over again. I tried to scream, but no sound came. I wanted to stop, to break free, but I couldn't. The only way out, the rule said, was to accept an irreversible loss. But what could I lose that was worse than the guilt I already carried? I realized then that the price of escaping this cycle wasn't just my memories. It was something far worse. And yet, I had no choice. To be free, I had to accept it. The irreversible loss. But what was it? What could I lose? I stood there in the pit, trapped in my own memory, my mind a swirling vortex of images and voices. I could feel the pull, the weight of it dragging me deeper, drowning me in a sea of regret and guilt. My sister's lifeless body haunted me, her eyes staring through me as if accusing me, blaming me for not doing enough. The walls of the room seemed to press in tighter with every breath I took, the air thick with the stench of decay and loss. And yet, I couldn't look away. I couldn't escape. As the cycle of memories continued, I could feel something else creeping in, something darker. It wasn't just my own guilt that held me in place. There was something else in the pit, something far older, far more malevolent. It whispered to me, a voice not my own, not anyone I recognized. It was ancient, guttural, and filled with malice. You cannot leave, it hissed, its voice crawling up my spine like 1,000 cold fingers. You have to pay the price. I tried to shut it out, tried to force my mind to think of anything else, but it was no use. The memories wouldn't stop. They circled back again and again. My sister, my failure, her death. My parents' tearful eyes. Their disappointment in me. The whispers of guilt that haunted me every waking moment. Every step I took in life. But then, something changed. The voices, the whispers, began to twist, as if the memory itself was shifting. My sister's image blurred, her face changing, distorting into something else, something darker. Her skin began to stretch and warp, her eyes turning into black pits, her mouth gaping open in a silent scream that echoed in my ears. The room around me began to distort too, the walls bending and warping as though the very fabric of reality was coming undone. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. My feet were rooted to the spot, the ground cold and wet beneath me. The air was thick with a foul stench, like rot and decay, as if the very essence of death was seeping into my lungs. And then I saw it, behind my sister's now monstrous form, a shadow moving in the corner of the room, its shape indistinct, but its presence overwhelming. It was the thing from the island, the one that had lured me into this hell. The flickering green light. It wasn't just a light, it was a creature. Its shape shifted with every blink, its form constantly changing, like it was made of smoke or liquid, its movements fluid, impossible to track. It was the one pulling the strings, orchestrating this nightmare, feeding off my pain, my regret, and it wanted me to stay, to suffer, to drown in this endless loop of loss. I could feel its presence now, pressing in on me, its weight crushing, suffocating. I could hear it, too, its voice in my ear, soft and coaxing, like a lover's whisper. Accept it, it crooned. Let go. You are nothing but a shadow in this place. You have nothing left, no one to save, no way out. I screamed, a sound that came from deep within me, raw and desperate, but the creature's laughter echoed over my voice, drowning it out. You want to leave, but you can't. Not until you give up what you cherish most. The ground beneath me trembled, and the walls of the pit cracked open, revealing a dark abyss below. I could feel it calling to me, pulling me toward it, threatening to swallow me whole. The whispers from the tree, the voices of the dead, filled the air, overlapping with the creature's voice, creating a maddening cacophony that rattled my bones. It was all too much. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. And then I realized what the creature wanted. The irreversible loss. The thing it sought from me wasn't just a physical thing. It was my connection to the world, my tether to the living. It wanted my soul. I had to make a choice. I could feel it now, the weight of the decision, the price of my freedom. What was worth giving up? What could I sacrifice to escape this hellish cycle? The memories, the guilt, the pain, they had been my life for so long. But to escape, I had to sever the last tie I had left. I could hear the creature's voice in my ear, mocking me. You are nothing but a memory. Your life is nothing but a shadow. Give me what I want, and I will let you go. I closed my eyes. I knew what I had to do. I thought of the last thing that tied me to my humanity, the last thing I had left. The memory of my sister, the image of her smile, the love that had once been there. But I had to give that up. I had to forget her, erase her from my mind, cut the last tie that connected me to the real world. If I didn't, I would be trapped here forever. With a final, desperate breath, I let go. I released the memory. I let it slip away from me, like sand through my fingers, until it was nothing but a distant, fading echo. The creature's laughter filled my ears as I felt the weight of the loss wash over me, the unbearable emptiness that came with it. The cycle stopped. The pit, the memories, the forest, they all vanished. For a moment, there was silence. And then, everything changed. The forest, the island, it all came rushing back. But it wasn't the same. The trees had grown twisted, their branches reaching out like fingers, clawing at the sky. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the ground beneath me was wet and soft. The cabin was gone, replaced by a crumbling ruin. And I wasn't alone anymore. The whispers from the roots were louder now, their voices mixed with a chorus of mournful wails, all of them calling my name. I was still there, still on the island, but something had changed. I had crossed a line. The rules, the ones I had read before, didn't matter anymore. I had broken them, and now the island had claimed me. I turned to run, but the path was gone. There was no way out. The flickering green light was back. But now it wasn't just a light. It was the creature standing before me, its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowing with a sickly yellow light. It opened its mouth, and the words came out in a hiss. You're mine now. And then I understood. The irreversible loss had never been about a memory. It had been about my soul. I had given it away willingly without even knowing. Now, I was tethered to the island, to the whispers, to the horrors that lay beneath the earth. And I would never leave, not unless I broke another rule. But the question was, could I? I stumbled backward, my heart racing in my chest as the green light pulsed ominously before me. The creature, now fully visible, was no longer just a shapeless form, but something that bore a twisted resemblance to the very memories I had tried to escape. It had taken on my sister's face, her once innocent, smiling face, except it was hollow, gaunt, and twisted with an eerie grin that stretched impossibly wide. Its mouth, too wide for its face, split open further, revealing rows of sharp teeth, glistening with what looked like the same dark liquid that had pooled in my nightmares. Why do you resist? The creature hissed, its voice now a cruel mockery of the love I once felt. You were always meant to be mine. The air around me grew cold, biting into my skin as the earth itself seemed to groan beneath me. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but my feet felt frozen to the ground, and every breath I took felt heavier, suffocating me. My mind swirled with confusion, with regret, and with a maddening realization that I couldn't leave. Not without giving everything I had left. But what was left? What could I still sacrifice? Then, from the darkness behind the creature, I heard it, the whispering. The same whispers from the root. Low and guttural. The voices of the long-dead souls that had wandered this island. Their agony filling the air like a poison. I hadn't heard them this clearly before. Their cries reaching into my very soul, pulling me down into the abyss with them. They called to me, beckoning me to join them in their endless torment. But there was something else in those whispers now, something familiar. It was her voice, my sister's voice. "Help me?" it said, weak but pleading, twisted in desperation. "Please, don't leave me here. Don't leave me with it." For a moment, I was paralyzed, caught between the creature and the disembodied cry of my sister. It felt like a sickening loop, like I was being pulled in two directions. The creature laughed, its voice like the screech of 1,000 crows. "You can't save her," it mocked. "She's already mine, just like you will be." I closed my eyes, the weight of everything crashing down on me. The loss, the guilt, the pain. They all flooded back, but this time, there was no memory to escape to, no place to hide from the truth. I had broken the rules. I had sacrificed the last of my humanity for freedom, but now I was trapped in this nightmare. But then, through the din of the whispers and the mocking laughter of the creature, something else caught my attention. Faint sound. It was distant at first, but then it grew louder, clearer. It was a voice, not from the creature, not from the whispers, but from somewhere else. A human voice, faint but unmistakable. A man's voice calling out in panic. "Help! Please, somebody, anybody, get me out of here." I snapped my head toward the source of the sound, desperate to latch onto any shred of hope. But I saw nothing but shadows. Just the flickering green light, the trees' gnarled roots writhing like snakes beneath the ground, and the creature's monstrous face smiling back at me. But then the voice called again, closer this time. "Please, don't let it take me. Don't let it take you too." I was torn. The creature's grip on me was tightening, its smile widening, and yet the voice was a lifeline, a chance to break free from the madness, to find some way out. I had no idea who it was or how they were here, but something about that voice, its desperation, its fear, spurred me into action. I turned, running as fast as I could, my feet slipping on the slick, damp earth as I searched for the source. The whispers from the root grew louder in my ears, a chorus of agony, but I ignored them, focusing on the voice. The shadows around me twisted, pulling at my limbs, trying to drag me back into the dark. But I pushed forward, desperate, driven by the need to save whoever was out there. The voice led me deeper into the forest, toward a clearing I had never seen before. It was strange, almost unreal. Everything in the clearing was untouched, as if time itself had frozen. The trees around the area were different from the others, their bark pale, almost white, and their branches hung low, weighed down by something heavy. In the center of the clearing, there was a large stone circle. The voice came from inside it. "You have to get me out. You have to." I stepped closer, my heart pounding, and then I saw it, a figure, hunched and trembling, sitting in the center of the stone circle. It was a man, his face gaunt and covered in dirt, his eyes wide with terror. He was shackled to the ground by thick, black vines, his body shaking uncontrollably. "Help me!" he cried, his voice broken and raw. "It's too late for me, but you can still escape. You have to listen to me." I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew this was my chance. I rushed forward, reaching toward the man, but before I could touch him, the ground beneath me shook violently. The air turned cold, and a low, growling rumble filled the clearing. The creature's laughter echoed, and the shadows around us seemed to writhe, closing in from all sides. The man's eyes widened in horror. "No, no, you shouldn't have come here. But it was too late." The creature surged forward, its form shifting like smoke, a twisting mass of limbs and eyes. It descended upon us, engulfing the man in an instant. His scream was cut off, swallowed by the darkness. I turned, desperately trying to escape, but the ground beneath me cracked open, and I fell. I tumbled down into the earth, into the cold, damp depths of the island's heart. The walls around me closed in, suffocating. As the whispers grew louder, more frantic, filling my head with their madness. And there, at the bottom of the pit, I saw it, the root that hummed with life. It stretched before me, its vast, gnarled form pulsating with energy. The whispers came from it, the souls of the damned bound to it, calling to me, begging me to join them. But I knew what it was. I knew what it wanted. I had broken the last rule, had stepped too far into the island's twisted embrace. I could feel it pulling me in, tugging at my very soul, and I knew then that I was lost. I was just another voice in the endless chorus of whispers, bound forever to the tree, to the island, to the cycle that would never end. The creature's laughter echoed in my ears one final time before everything went silent, and the world went dark. And I understood. The island had claimed me, just as it claimed everyone else who had come before. There was no escape. Not for me. Not for the couple who came with me. I wonder how they are handling their situation. The price had been paid. The loss, irreversible. And now, my soul would forever wander the island, just another whisper in the wind, lost to time.